This is Critical Nonsense, our high-lowbrow show about culture, science, and tech. This week, Aaron asks Joey about digital vigilantes, and Joey asks Aaron about mediocrity.
Woo!
Party pants. These are party pants. Party pawns wear party pants. This is what a Joey sounds like. I was about to just keep going.
Yeah,
I had to stop myself.
It should have kept going.
I don't know what you mean. Like, party pants, I wear party pants. Pants have capes and pants have party capes. This is what an Aaron sounds like. I'm there with you.
And this is what an executive producer and party monarch Jess Vander sounds like.
Mm-hmm.
Hi, this is Jess. Party monarch butterfly.
Whoa!
What?
Oh,
They're going extinct.
The housekeeping is we're actually in the same room for the first time in 2.5 years. 2 years?
Yeah, it's been 2 years, I think. And we're sitting around a table and it's so nice.
It's three-dimensional.
It's three-dimensional.
This is
I
different.
have to turn my neck and things like that.
It's so true.
Moving
The
my-
pace of the conversations, we will be talking at the same time instead of...
Yes.
You can't see my mouth right now, but it's almost moving like
It's
I'm
true.
going to be talking, but
It's
I
true.
can't.
Actually, that makes for better podcast hygiene, so apologies.
None taken. I don't think that's what you say to apologize.
I
I'm
have,
sorry.
I
Not
have
the right response at all. I'm sorry.
umbrage. I have
Yes.
umbrage.
Not the professor. So that is our only housekeeping, right? Like is that it? Is that it?
That's it. YouTube for the hearing impaired has closed captions. Our show is there. And
Anybody have cool news to share?
Well, I'm flying an airline tomorrow. That doesn't qualify at all, does it? I'm sorry. I hiked Mount Baldy last weekend, 10,000 feet.
Wow.
Yeah, it's it's like the 42nd highest mountain in the world. Not a good number for it, but it was high. It was high. I took a chairlift to 7-hour hike. It was
10,000 feet is
Wow.
42nd in the world?
Yeah,
Really?
or 42nd in the U.S. Maybe.
Yeah, that's more accurate.
Yeah. Because like
The Himalayas are tall.
they're pretty tall.
They're tall.
It's one of the places that people like train for when they're going to do like K2 and stuff in the States. But yes, like
Fun fact, maybe we've said this before, but talking about all the peaks in the world, the Earth is smooth enough, despite its great peaks, to pass billiard ball standards if it was a billiard ball size.
wow, it'd be that smooth.
So as much as we're like, the Rockies are huge, Himalayas, am I right? It's within the range of tolerance to be as smooth as a billiard ball.
You know, this is not as precise, nor is it as exciting. It is words don't matter. But I needed to let y'all know something that I learned, which is that the sun is a mass of incandescent gas, a gigantic nuclear furnace. I won't continue. I just when you said the Earth, it made me go there.
The sun
Yeah.
is a mass of incandescent gas. The sun is a mass of
Well,
incandescent gas.
on that note,
Yeah, true.
we also did karaoke. Aaron,
Yeah,
Detective Aaron.
I do literally have a monocle in right now.
Do detectives
No, he
wear
doesn't.
monocles?
All of them. Still,
All of
yes.
Still to this day, it's part of the fraternity of detectives.
Okay,
Yes.
Aaron.
Yes. So I do. There's been a phenomenon that I think we've
Something
all
like a phenomenon.
really. That's what we're
I thought we were just doing this game. Carry on.
Wow, the Lekulji. But yeah. Just in case anyone didn't know, that's a song by him.
No one knows what Le Cool J
Yeah,
means.
it's okay.
LL
It's okay.
Cool J.
Oh, I was
Correct.
just gonna let
Carry
them
on.
figure it out.
Ladies love Cool James.
Indeed,
carry on.
indeed.
Of all the things you choose to explain that are said out loud on the show.
It is a song from like 1998.
Okay.
Yeah.
It was a.
I don't know that everyone knows his later work, Phenomenon.
God, that was a good album. So we.
Ooh,
That was good.
this is going off the rails. It never got on the rails.
Okay,
really,
back
for
on the
being
rails.
honest.
Back on the rails. So, one of the things, there are two big things that I have been sort of paying attention
Earth
to.
and the sun.
The Earth and the sun that have been taking over, like pretty much, a lot of podcasts and a lot of new streaming content in general. And it's a lot of like true crime stuff. That's not new, right? Like when Serial came out years ago, everybody started paying attention to true crime stuff.
Serial, the podcast.
The podcast, yes.
Unsolved Mysteries, hard
true,
copy.
True. Boom, boom. You're right. This has been around much longer. You're totally right. But there's also been, at the same time, a really big, I think, resurgence of interest in major celebrity like pop culture moments that often also were crime related. So you had like the O.J. Simpson true crime story, or you had really like all the true crime stories, the Johnny Versace one. There are these moments that are coming up that want to be captured in content that are about these moments that basically happened in the 90s that everybody saw, and now we're talking about them. But more recently, what's been kind of like, it's been making me uncomfortable, and I want to talk about it with y'all, has been inspired by a lot of what's gone on with the R. Kelly documentaries, the Britney Spears documentaries, and even the Gabby Petito case, which is uncomfortable for many different reasons. But it's this strain of like digital vigilanteism where like people who are watching these things are no longer spectators. They're inserting themselves into these cases and these stories as they're happening. And we're seeing change happen immediately. We're seeing people go to jail. We're seeing people, we're seeing all sorts of outcomes that are happening in real time. And so I suppose what I wanted to talk about more broadly is when it comes to this sort of digital vigilanteism, what are the ultimate wages that we're all going to have to pay for?
What's the vigilante tax is
God, that's, damn it, Joey, that's a much better question. That's a much more thoughtful and better written question. He's real good. Real good.
It's interesting because I can think of instances where the digital vigilanteism went in the right direction, and I can think of instances where it went in the wrong direction. Right? The Boston Marathon bombing had that whole situation where people online like were scanning through all of the footage, trying to find someone who they thought might be the suspect who planted the bomb. And I can't remember all of the details of it now. It was just coming out of what you said, but I think they were like doxing people and doxing meaning publishing private or personal information of someone online. And like chasing down the wrong people, and they're like, it's this person, and it super wasn't that person. But then there are other instances like, Michelle McNamara, who was Patton Oswalt's ex-wife, who was also a journalist and had done all of this investigative research around the, was it the Zodiac killer, right?
Yeah.
And then since it sort of elevated interest, and they recently think that they've found the Zodiac killer now. That was like in the news recently. And so where it pushes me is, do we need a level of interest in terms of public interest and pressure to resolve some of these things, right? And so instances where, Free Britney as an example, where all of this sort of pressure came in and attention came into a thing, elevated it for, the civil servants who are responsible for resolving these things. All of a sudden it was like, oh, we got to focus on this thing. It's been slipping through the cracks. Like it is that new, right? Is like the drawing of attention to a specific issue doesn't feel like it's necessarily new, right? Like the Salem witch trials was like everyone was focused on one thing, and we're gonna find these witches, and all of a sudden we went through like crazy steps. Like, is this any different? And it's just the medium for like pooling the attention. Like even the documentary The Jinx was sort of similar, right? That guy just got life in prison, who had, he was sort of under suspicion for a long time, and there were investigations, but like nothing really happened until the documentary came out.
Yeah, I mean, what scares me, not scares me, but I think what's unique about where we are now is that you can weaponize shame so much more easily now. And it's just, it's because the internet always, but it's like, I compare sort of like the Salem witch trials to now, and some of those mechanics were the same. Like, you have certain norms and standards that you want to hold people accountable for, or hold people accountable to, and you will ensure that there's sort of a collective awareness of what those standards are, and then justice gets carried out. And there's also something, I think, in our like more depraved humanity, like in the more depraved side of our humanity, that loves to see like, scary justice played out, justice, like ultimate fatalistic justice played out. And when, you watch people who are like hearing about the Gabby Petito case and immediately like flooding the FBI with like, with various tips. Who knows how real they were or how much rigor they went through to get them. And at the end of the day, the FBI has to filter through more tips to figure out what to chase down, what to follow. And that, I guess that's what scares me. It's like, you can weaponize shame with a lower barrier to entry, and yet it's just flooding the marketplace with less certainty.
Yeah, there's the part, I think, for sure, there is an aspect of this that is the like town square, like drawing and quartering, or public hangings and things like that from the past. There is clearly like this like see justice done, like the sort of hard version of it, and that is always going to be a show. Or it feels like it's going to always be a show, maybe, I guess. But the other part of it that feels relevant in a lot of the cases that we've been mentioning is that it feels like there is a class or caste system that is born out of this, right? Where if something bad happens to you and you are either famous or has an interesting narrative, even if two things are equally bad, if yours has an interesting story bad thing, maybe you're more likely to get your bad thing resolved versus someone who doesn't, right? And that sort of caste dynamic feels kind of bad.
Yes, and if you can please excuse a bunch of jargon that actually might be interesting to this. As you're talking about this, I couldn't help but think about this like digital vigilanteism as kind of like a collective action problem. Like what makes people rally around a thing and like get involved. And what Aaron, you were just talking about feels like imagine there are two, forgive me, I only know a little as of this Wikipedia article, but like a couple key components, one being perceived efficacy of like people feeling emboldened that they know that they have what they need to like contribute, and people are like, I just saw a thing and like, let me help. And that there's like a ton of, maybe a lower bar for people like trying to be useful. But I think, Joey, you're talking about the other piece of the two, which is related to perceived injustice, which is like, how do you get someone to feel like there is a problem or something that has been wronged? And that's where class and caste could play a role of like, well, what scenario feels more motivating because of how morally wrong it is, and it starts to show like what we care about and like what we think is like, oh, that makes sense, versus like, what? Crazy, I'm outraged, something must be done.
Did y'all see Don't Fuck with Cats, the documentary?
I couldn't watch it, I was too afraid.
Miniseries?
Please explain.
It's interesting for this reason because
spoiler alert.
I guess spoiler alert.
Okay.
I'm not
alert.
Yes, probably spoiler alert. Let's say that.
There we go.
These people online found someone harming animals. They found videos that someone was posting of them harming animals in very graphic, terrible ways.
No.
And they were like we love cats. Like, you can't fuck with cats. That's like literally where it comes from. But a group of people began trying to find and investigate this person and trying to tell police, like, there's a sort of clear progression. Eventually, this person killed a person, and they like in this instance, they were never able to sort of, even having evidence and sort of identifying things, never able to sort of like draw that attention or prioritization ahead of time. They were like, this person is escalating, they're going to hurt a person, and everyone's like, yeah, okay, sure, like if we can find them, we'll do something about it. But you think about if, I don't know, some celebrity got involved in that case, what would have been different, right? If a celebrity is knocking on the door of some police station or something like that, like all of a sudden the attention and seriousness of it changes.
There's sort of that not classic, but recent classic dynamic of like, there has to be some sense of sensationalism for it to get picked up in the ether, like in the news cycle and whatnot. And either that sensationalism comes from the nature of the offense or action, or the notoriety of the people that are involved. And I think that's what I find so interesting about the Gabby Petito situation, is that there were some folks for whom they were very, very familiar with the two of them and their YouTube series. And so there was like built-in celebrity there to a degree, which then spilled out with, on top of that, just the weird circumstances of what was going on between the two of them on their trip. But I think one of the things that, Jess, you pointed out with your those two areas, I guess, that remind me of like some contextual factors that also play into this are a distrust in a governing system. You don't start to be a vigilante unless you don't trust the system that's supposed to convict those who have done wrong.
Totally.
And I think there's a lot to be said for many of these cases that have risen to the top, and the different audiences within them that are usually those of some form of marginalized group. Like when we think of Black women with R. Kelly, for example, or we think about just young women when it comes to the Britney Spears case. Like there's sort of an understanding in many cases that this is the only way that people are going to pay attention to the needs of these audiences, is by them speaking up and having a free Britney movement for 10 years.
Yeah, the trust thing was something too. It was like, as you were talking, I was like, if you don't trust the police or the scales of justice or sort of institutions broadly, like that is a thing that is, in general, institutional trust is on a decline. Who does Edelman does like a institutional trust barometer. Yeah. And it across like four, it's like financial institutions, companies, government, and something else, but they're all sort of on the decline. And politicians maybe
also have always been.
They've always been low. That's true.
Well,
to be fair.
not to. I mean, there's been pretty significant decline.
Yeah.
But if you don't trust that justice is going to be done, all of a sudden, and it's hard to talk about this as we're going through without thinking about like Q or some of those movements where there is sort of a perception, a lack of trust in institutions, and a perception of injustice. And then taking things into your own hands, right? And
an impatience for things to move at the pace that we are now accustomed to. Like when it comes to the way that we consume information, like there's no question that like being in an instant on-demand society for so many things that has increased over the past 20 years, that we would have an increased relationship with impatience and expect things to change faster, even though those are the things that will still move at a pace that could never be as fast as ordering my Seamless and it getting stuck in our
I was just going to say, you can't order a Justice on an app.
No.
Can I get one Justice, please?
For the
Thank
side
you.
of
additional
Parmesan fries.
Justice? Oh, yeah, or fries. That's good. This group of vigilantes, though, to me feels like a smaller subset of just broader voyeurs who are captivated for, I think, different reasons. Like, there is definitely something about the complexity. Like, if we're going to take Serial as an example, the reason everyone, I hypothesize, was into Serial was because you come in and you feel one way and you feel so sure about what you know, and then the more you follow along the storyline, no spoilers, you start to question that, and you're like, oh, but could it be this? And the complexity of the situation and the uncertainty of it all is really interesting. Like, in a way, there is almost like a sick joy of the lack of trust or certainty, because it's like, how interesting is this? It makes for a very compelling story, a baseline for entertainment.
And it makes our experience as spectators different, because I find that so interesting. Like, one of the challenges of growing up in the age that we are is that we have access to more content than any other moment in history. But that also means that we have, like, I feel like it kind of hits the dopamine trigger too many times. Like, we know so many stories. We know how it's going to play out. It takes a lot more to shock us into interest, or to like jar us into any sort of like intrigue. And being so directly and obviously like challenged at, you thought you knew and we just screwed you, and there's a totally different turn, and then a totally different turn. It's no spoilers. That's gonna be the name of this episode. No spoilers, but like with Squid Game, it's like the last 5 minutes of every episode, that's the button they hit.
Yeah.
You never know. You never know.
It also feels like too, it is just this like confrontation with fear.
Yeah.
At least that's sort of how I enter into these things. It's just like how precarious justice is.
Yes.
That in all of these situations, even, in so many of the interactions that I've had with this genre, which is probably like big ones that have risen to the top. I'm not like my little sister's like very into true crime, but you just can, by the end of it, it's like, if I was sitting on a jury and I have this information, I'm like, I don't know, did they do it?
Yeah.
I can't know anything. And that sort of fear of the precarity of your own freedom as it relates to sort of how precarious justice is like terrifying, right?
Yeah.
Like that someone could do one wrong thing and create a misperception that you did a thing. Like, I think that's why I'm like, I don't like the genre a ton, because I'm like, ooh, everything that's
so
happening
fragile.
in any story that rises to a true crime like hit is like, it's terrible. Like, if you were in that story, you would be very unhappy.
I love it's like a breaking an emotional fourth wall in some way, where it's like, so many people just want to sit and watch their thing, but you're like forcing me to like face my own deepest moral and ethical dilemmas on the subway on the way across town. So who knows? I mean, we are in a weird place with all this stuff, and I don't think it's gonna like slow down, but I do wonder, how over time we manage to ensure that we don't, or that we maintain or introduce or mediate some level of integrity within this, such that we don't end up with, doxing run amok.
Pitchforks and torches. Yeah.
Wow.
Which, speaking of a weird place, this brings us to Jess's Vigilante Corner.
Yeah, speak for yourself.
It's the Western like vigilante sound.
The
right?
Man with No Name, The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly.
Thank you.
Low amounts of trust in systems have created a digital throng of, I don't know if we can quite call them heroes, vigilantes, trying to create a kind of justice that doesn't seemingly fairly exist. And it has also spun out into a lot of stuff that hits home really hard. And it is an interesting thing that it sounds like we're not sure has amassed to the point of threat, but certainly to the point of public attention and awareness and perhaps even entertainment, which is interesting and a little bit spooky. I don't know. In the theme of spooky times.
The moral of the story is that Aaron has vigilante ennui.
Wow, you just wanted to do that, and I'm okay with it, and I welcome it. Oh, I was put it on a t-shirt.
Yeah, but the other things that you have, like the other things were like really good today. Like the other questions were like incredibly awesome, and then
this was
like
vigilante ennui is
okay. Well,
incredible.
I mean, sure. We'll take it.
It's not. It's not.
All right. No, welcome it.
hey.
Party pants, I have the party pants.
And
Party pawns wear party pants. Party queens wear party capes.
Oh, I was just giving you.
It just feels like very like German industrial, ambient
craft
pop.
work situation. I mean, it's interesting that very specifically you've created a party pant monarchy.
Yeah.
You did decide that this was going to be like that was their system.
That's
Yeah.
true. Yeah.
And it, like, I don't know, it just feels okay. Like, I'm here for it. The regents of the party pants.
The kingdom of party pants.
Yes. Yeah, it's very, it's very Katamari Damacy.
Yeah. Katamari Damacy.
I'm going to listen to that all night.
Dear listeners, if you think you missed something, you didn't. This is all it is.
Yep.
This is just nonsense.
We're back from the break. It's an amuse-bouche. Or your party pants. Y'all.
Yeah.
Joey?
I've been thinking about excellence and phases of life and achievement and those ideas for a while. Maybe it's just because I'm a man of a certain age. I don't know.
I hate it.
I hate it.
Something in particular?
Not necessarily, just sort of like speeds and changing speeds sometimes and like gear shifting, not for long periods, but just like that idea of being able to, if you're running hot, like downshift a little.
This is all a symbol of life stuff.
Yeah.
But not actual sport.
And there was an article recently that I saw, a bunch of people talking about and read part of it. Was a long article. I didn't read all of it. It was in the Times magazine called "The Privilege of Mediocrity," and it was speaking about mediocrity through a lot of different lenses. I think one of the primary lenses was around the sort of racial, sort of systemic injustice of people of races other than white in the United States not having the opportunity to be mediocre, right? Because, the sort of classic idea of, if you screw up and you're not white, you're, making a statement about the caliber of all other people of your race. And if you screw up, if you're white, you're just individually incompetent. But there were also these other ideas as well around, mediocrity being sort of a stepping stone on the path to excellence, and this idea of the privilege of mediocrity tying in with some of the things I'd been just sort of personally thinking about around shifting gears and like, can you be excellent at one point and like take a break and be mediocre for a minute and then shift back into trying to be excellent again. It had me reevaluating the idea of mediocrity and that it wasn't necessarily like a permanent state or, an attribute of an individual, but maybe sort of a state of mind or a transient state or things like that. And so I wanted to ask y'all, how do we feel about mediocrity?
No, that
I liked it.
Yeah,
it.
That
was
one
a follow through.
Vigilante was better.
Vigilante, really.
Vigilante was much more creative. I think My brother and I talk about this every once in a while. And I was talking to him a few years ago when I was going through a pretty stressful time. And he had just had his second child. And I was just like, I was going through that thing where it's like, how can you possibly take care of 2 human lives and a whole household? And I feel like I can barely take care of my one. Like, I need some tips from how you do this. And what he said to me really stuck with me. He said, you have to recognize that you should be burning at 75% because you literally can never be ready to be at 125 unless you've been saving something up in the engine. And what you don't realize until you have kids, at least what he said, is that you don't know that energy is always going to be about work. Like, that's where you are in your life right now. But when it comes to I don't know, your kid is going through something super tragic at school. Your teenager is having a moment. You don't know what it could be. It could be something much more serious. It could be drugs. There are so many things that require your attention that if you are not moderating that energy, then you can't be there when you need to be there. And the reason it stood out to me so much is because when it comes to mediocrity I always read as an output. It is an outcome of a certain type of effort. And it is loaded with judgment, but it also is sort of defined as just the most basal state. And I think that I often equate it to the input, which is the effort that I'm putting into something. And I feel bad if I just assume that with less effort, my output will be mediocre. And I think that builds onto what this article gets at, the racial inequities when it comes to mediocrity, which is that there feels as though there is, it's not so much about I'm going to let down all Black people everywhere. It's more so that I know that there is actually a lot less further to fall if I do that. There's not generations of wealth. There's not a family house somewhere that I can just figure it out for a little while. And even I'm saying this, and I feel like I'm coming from a certain background where I don't have as many of those lack of those safety nets as many other people do. But that's something that I always consider when I worry about that downshifting, that adjustment, that coming in at 75%. Because if my 75% isn't good enough, then I'm going to not have a home anymore. It's very catastrophized.
Yeah.
But I also wonder, when it comes to that mindset, or I don't wonder about it, but I'm aware that mindset is so destructive.
Yeah.
And it completely robs you of being inventive, being innovative, thinking about what creative solutions might exist because you're so in survival mode all the time.
Yeah.
And you don't give yourself those moments to put in less effort that would allow you the energy to then overclock when it comes to those creative moments.
Yeah, or even simply just invest that in another location that could be right, even not necessitating hitting 125% or whatever, but 75 here, and I have this 25 of discretionary energy or whatever. Yeah, it's I don't know. It is this sort of mediocrity is, I think, at least among probably a certain group of people, a swear word, right?
Yep.
Right? It is a 4-letter word, even though it means middle, right? Mediocre, median. But it is this fearful thing. In some ways, I think I would rather be terrible at some things than mediocre at them.
Yes.
And so that idea of the privilege of mediocre or of mediocrity and the ability to take a break is really, we've been doing work with a company that serves moms going back into the workplace, potentially after having kids, or sort of moms who have been continued working, but are sort of looking for jobs. It is specifically focused on mothers in the workforce, and thinking about that idea a lot as well of sort of, do you get the opportunity to, show up good enough, right? Do you get the benefit of good enough? This did it, this is satisfactory.
Sucks.
That idea of But the flip side of it is like, those ideas are so stigmatized, and fear of losing a job or ability to provide for your family or any of those things, that then at the same time when you need it, right, like and there are moments you need it, if that is not your basal state of not sort of taking pride in what you do, or what, however we might want to phrase it, like there's so much fear to take it when you need it that then you can never kind of break into that state. And I've been just sort of stuck on that idea of like, this idea of like excellence in some ways is really important to sort of recognize and sort of appreciate people who are doing really wonderful things, and to sort of honor the whatever those people are doing. And then also the idea that like you being excellent one time doesn't mean you have to be excellent the next time and the time after that, and so on. That like the maintenance of excellence for any sort of extended period is just a heavy load to carry.
I mean, I think about one-hit wonders a little bit. Like, the Mighty Mighty Bosstones only had to do the impression that I get, and they were good. Like, they're still good now, right?
Probably still touring.
Yes, yeah, and I think that it's not exactly the same. I think there are a lot of different models for like how it can play out, but you really, in some ways, only need to hit one excellent moment perhaps to sustain you for a certain amount of time. I think what's so unfair is that we tend to believe as a society that excellence must be sustained all the time. Like truly, that like if you ever don't do that, you are unremarkable. Like literally, as you said, that mediocre sits in the middle state. Like if you're terrible, there's a remark to be made there that perhaps you can get growth from, or like critique from, or whatever. And if you're fantastic, it's remarkable because everyone will say something about it. When it's mediocre, it's invisible. And I don't know that there are many things that feel worse in our society, especially today, than feeling invisible, and anything much more risky than feeling invisible.
Yeah. The risk part, I think, is a big part of it, like you were saying before, where, even in that comment, of mediocrity being like a stepping stone on the path to excellence, is like, if you're experimenting, like the whole point of an experiment is that you don't know what the outcome is. You are testing a thing to see if it may be true. Right. You're sort of taking some sort of scientific method. You have a hypothesis, a hunch that maybe doing something differently could result in good things. But if you're afraid of the reprisal of doing something even mediocre, then your willingness to sort of take risks and try to come up with something new is reduced. And so that sort of fear of mediocrity may be an inhibitor of ever actually achieving excellence, because you're sort of continually measuring against some sort of pre-established standard. And
creating an environment in which that mediocrity where you don't have that fear of mediocrity, feels so hard. And it feels like it's something, because it's so infused in business, it seems really hard to stop that from happening.
It makes me think of the classical painter problem, maybe even like the Impressionist problem, where like to respect, I feel like I've talked about this before, but like to respect Picasso's cubism, it is helpful to see the beginning of his painting
his
education.
Portraits and landscapes.
Like work that you wouldn't even recognize as Picasso's work, because it's so like so traditional. Like his technique was impeccable according to whatever standards decided like that was good. And then he was like, okay, well, I'm bored. I'm going to go be creative and try stuff, and people may or may not like it, but there's something about like having proved himself once, or like that he was capable. And I feel like there's a comfort regardless of who you're proving yourself to, right? Like, is it other people or even to yourself that if I wanted, I could be amazing by X standard, but can I find permission or give myself permission to attempt something that may not objectively or subjectively be considered good because I'm trying something?
It reminds me of Bob Gale and Bob Zemeckis, who were the writing duo behind Back to the Future, had two scripts that they did, the director and writing combo.
I like that you called Robert Zemeckis Bob Zemeckis.
Oh, of course. Bob
Me
Gale,
and Bob.
They're the Bobs.
Yep.
They're the Bobs.
They're the Bobs.
What I find really interesting is that the two movies that they produced before Back to the Future were like critical flops and financial flops, and like by any standards, they should have never worked in Hollywood ever again. And yes, there were a number of like kind of flukes that made the script of Back to the Future get made, but the fact that Back to the Future is what it is reminds me of the serendipity of excellence too. Like, it's a fickle thing. Like, it's not just like the lightning striking, but it's also that it gets measured differently depending on where it's created, it comes from, when it comes from, what's been done recently or later than them. So I feel like that's really important. It's to the Picasso point.
Yeah, and it feels like it adds on a third thing to, Aaron, like your input and output of mediocrity. Input as like effort or like intention, and output as like the results or however. But there's also just like the third thing of like interpretation, like how it is measured, like the effects of like the symbolism. Just like and that. I don't even know how to, like, there's one that's sort of centered around the one who is doing the creating, like the makers, the people who are trying, the workers, whatever it is. And then there's like I guess the third thing is what the, performance in front of an audience.
Yeah, it's the pitchfork. It's the pitchfork crowd again.
Oh my goodness, we're back.
Oh, we're back. There's a part of this too, I guess, in since, obviously all of us are artists, but we don't share our art. It's just true. For us.
Yeah. Except for this vocal art.
Yeah.
Weaving yarns.
But in work, there's a thing that I have not, I've been thinking about, and I don't really know how to pull apart. There is sort of this broader culture of workism that I think is getting a lot more conversation, right? The idea that you are sort of defined by your work and your job, and it's, the what conversations we have. Yeah, exactly. What I still find myself doing it because if you meet a stranger, it's like you're trying to find a way to gauge of like, how are you spending your time? What are the things that you're interested in?
Oh, wait, I got to tell you, the Diane Rehm answer. Tell me about yourself. There's a really good piece in the New York Times about this from a few years ago that I definitely read before going on a hike, trying to make new friends, and I found out that that's what I'm supposed to say. So I'm sorry to interject, but I had to.
That is a good one. I'm going to hang on to that.
Yes,
file that away.
Yes,
that in the mind corner.
But this idea of sort of like, we've come to a state in the U.S. where we're, probably working too much. I say probably because, maybe some scientist somewhere has figured something out. I don't know. But the general consensus seems to be we're working too much. At the same time, there is this, and you see it in art that y'all are talking about of like, how do you take pride in your work or in a thing you do? And the workism versus pride thing is probably a measure of moderation and figuring out your balance, I guess, maybe. But that idea of if you are trying to take pride in your work and you are the person who has found, the perfect balance of things, how does that play into this question of mediocrity and because in my head, I think, and is like a cultural thing, like I am still like, if you do a thing, do it in a way that you can feel like proud of. And also I can see sort of the cracks in that concept at the same time.
I mean, not to buzzword it, but could it be something like the diminishing returns problem, where like basically, which means too much of a good thing is not going to be good. Like actually great for you if you take pride in your work and you work, but also is there a point at which you sort of crest over the top of actually you're not only putting in more than you need to, but it is actually making it worse. Like you're deriving less pleasure, joy, fulfillment, what have you, because you're just like, oh, well, I'll keep going and do that more. Yeah.
You've talked about of torturing a thing until.
Yes. It is. Only recently have I seen it, and it was not too long ago. But like, it was like working on something, and it was like not there. That was it. And then somehow it was after that. No, stop. Oh no, the wheels have fallen off. It is.
It kept going.
What just happened?
No, why?
And it's so painful because because I've never seen it before. I've never literally seen it happen before. But I think the other component, I guess, that sits alongside that is like how much it goes back to the point about like measurement of excellence and what matters. And I think a lot of times I get hung up on like the excellence of the output and wanting to see my pride in that output. And what I lose sight of is basically everything else that's going right in my life.
Basically all of it.
Literally everything, where it's like, oh, I'm sleeping regularly, or I'm not drinking as much. I don't know what it is, but those sorts of things are excellent. And that's important to keep in mind because it is a bigger story.
Mediocrity in a micro sense, but on net excellence.
Yeah.
Like when you look, when
is
you
that
zoom
the wrap-up
in,
corner?
I think so. I feel like if you zoom in really far and it's like, oh, I hate that. But you zoom out and we're just a sun that could be a billiard ball. It's just pretty smooth and passing all credentials, because what's a Marianas Trench here or there? Just zoom out.
I love that.
I'm into it.
I love that. And I also I appreciate my own. I'm glad that I have y'all with me to allow me to be mediocre when I need to be. And I mean that wholeheartedly, because I think that our own perceptions of mediocrity will never match other people's.
Oh, yeah.
And
I'm a huge hypocrite right now.
Oh, yeah.
Huge hypocrite.
Which we all are.
Hippocrates.
The Hippocrates of mediocrities?
The hippopotamus of
Hippopotamus.
Hippopotamus wearing the pants. That's actually
capes.
Capes.
Party pants.
Queen pants of party
hippos.
Critical nonsense. This is a Sylvain production.
Brought to you by Party Sleeves, sold by Party Pants Incorporated. We're changing our business model.
As always, we'd like to thank executive producer and party gaucho wearing friend, Jess Vander.
I like the idea of it just stopping at wearing. Party gaucho wearing Jess Vander.
Indeed. We'd also like to thank sound engineer and all-around great person, Alex Contel. He's always all around something, and this day it's great person. You must have that.
We'd like to thank our programming coordinator and the man that always brings the party, Les Jacobs, DJ Little Tiger.
And then also, thank you for the production help that came from Sarah Gilbert and Nora Mestrich. Y'all are each one leg of one pair of party pants. Yes.
And as always, thanks for the cargo party pants, Solen.
Oh, why so many pockets?
Such a specific new joke.
Yeah. Oh, God, we've just assaulted everybody with legs.
Party pants. I like my party pants.
Wear my party pants.
Special thanks to Party Pants.
Yeah, that snuck in. That's good.
Yeah.
I definitely I want to thank Only Murders in the Building. Have I already thanked that maybe?
I think you did.
Maybe I did.
But maybe
All right.
it's time to thank
Still
them again.
thankful.
Yeah, you know what? I'll thank Selena Gomez specifically. She's incredible in it. So there you go.
I'm thankful to Adrian Tchaikovsky for
P.D.
Children
Chai's
of
brother?
Time.
No. Different.
Rereading that series, and I was like, loved it then, and I forgot how good it was, and now I'm like, excellent.
Yes.
You've achieved excellence. Your next book is Free to be Mediocre. Change your
Yes.
gears, Adrian Tchaikovsky. Suck it up a little bit.
There you go. That's how I feel about Invincible. I think it's by Robert Kirkman and Moses. Really good graphic novel. Everybody check it out. It's got a series on Amazon Prime. It's very good.
Oh, hello. Jess here. Just would love to give a special thanks to Aaron Powers for being here in person and blessing us with his
Party
3D
The denim.
human self. It is so nice to be able to do this show with you in person.
Can I have a thanks but no thanks by Felicia to Aaron Powers for leaving before I sang a song at karaoke?
Oh no, I felt so bad.
What
You
was the
didn't.
song?
I did.
What was it supposed to be?
It didn't matter. The song didn't matter.
It was just that I've never ghosted on Joey ever.
Publicly shamed.
Literally
Just
never done that. I haven't. I've always said
I'm
goodbye.
I'm just like trying to
Process
think.
it.
I'm like, has it
No.
happened? I can't.
Because
think of
I
one.
don't leave. First of all, I'm usually the last person to leave a party, which is not a good trait of mine. Or not the last, but I'm very late, And then also, I love everyone so much, and I'm so. And that this is my other special thanks is Moderna, J&J, and Pfizer. Like, I being back in New York is almost indescribable, and the rush that came over me when I got to see people that I haven't seen in almost 2 years in person and hug them and just be around people that I respect.
You
and
only
am
cried
inspired
one
by.
time.
I thought I was going to be a basket case, and I have only cried one time, but
It wasn't even a full cry. It was just like a
it was a misty
single
eye.
tear.
Well, I think it's going to be hard to go back home. I think it's going to be I'm going to go back a
just
little bit.
move
changed.
back, you dummy.
The number of people that have said that to me this week, it's very, very high. But thank you, New York, for having me back, and thank you again for having treated me so well for 13 years to begin with.
And thank you for all your party pants.
There are a lot of party pants in New York.
People are getting a little loose with the party pants. I'll tell you that much.
What. Yup. What I'm not worried about is going back into my place and building a Lego typewriter. So I'm going to be doing that alone without anybody else's party pants. But
You can wear whatever pants you want. They should be party pants.
You can pants.
You can pants. You can pants if you want to.
Oh my goodness.
You can pants.
Party.
You can leave your pants behind. Because if your friends don't pants, and if they don't pants, well, they're no
party
friends of
pants.
mine.
I messed it up. Okay, I'm sorry. Okay, I'll see you guys in LA.
Bye.
Bye.
Love you.
Your baritone.